All right, what's up, guys? So today I'm going to talk about why I think design is dead in gaming, specifically Western gaming. Now, before I start this video, I want to make it clear that I think that every single section of this video has an exception. Okay. But really, just to start off, the whole idea for this video came off of a tweet by Marcus Leto, who is one of the principal designers of Halo. And on Twitter, he was just going through his thoughts playing through the newest Halo game, Halo Campaign Evolved, and just explaining what he thought was good and then what he thought was bad about the game. And what inspired me to make this video is this tweet right here. And he says, while Forerunner tech was metal, not stone, it was also ancient, vast, alive, and attuned to the horrors that lurked within. It had seen hundreds of millennia of conflict, yet the game shows it as a shiny metal that looks like it was built a few years ago. And I think that just sums up everything I thought about Halo and modern games. I don't think that they think these things through. They don't think of the millennia of conflict. They don't think of the horrors that lurked within. It's kind of just more about, I think, getting it out fast, but also just a lack of the soul of the art that they're making. And so this is why I think design has died. And there's three theories I have to how this happened. And these three theories are incompetence, bad actors, and apathy. Competence, bad actors, and apathy. All right, so starting off with incompetence. And this is just the idea that sometimes there's no agenda, there's no money lacking. It's just they're not that good at their job. And this is a really hard thing to say, but I think like any job, you have people who are not that great. And I think if they plopped me in to be an art designer in a game studio, I would probably be in this tier. I would not be that great of a character designer or art designer for a game. And it just stems from sometimes there's just a mere lack of talent. Okay. And I think the two games I'm showing on the screen here is just they did not make that great a game. And it's just as simple as that. And with art, I think it's harder to say this because art can be so subjective and a lot of different people can like certain things. With Concord, which I'm showing here on the screen, I think some people thought the design was not that bad. And I even saw where some people liked the gameplay of the game. However, I don't think that the main target market that they're going for liked the art style at all. And to me, that is how I wrap my head around this whole incompetence thing. I think it's all about who you're making the game for and who the target market is. So, just to kind of nail this down, here's how I think target markets work in gaming. I'm going to explain this through two methods. So, the first method, I kind of created a Venn diagram here, and you have different types of gamers in each circle. The top circle I have labeled normie, which has a handful of games there. You have ball and gun gamers and spell and sword gamers. Now, I didn't want to make this so complicated where it was hard to read, so of course there's more types of gamers than these three. But just for argument's sake, I think that if you have a normie, very little you're going to get them to go over into other games like Elden Ring or something like that. You may get some people, but I think generally you have buckets of gamers and they have specific games that they are interested in and that they love. And I don't think they depart too far from those general categories that they like very strongly, that their very most favorite game. So, for example, if you're like a huge Apex Legends fan and that's been your primary game for years now, I don't think that you rarely dip off into something completely different like Elden Ring, Hogwarts Legacy, The Sims, Animal Crossing as your primary game. You may go and play those for a little bit, but I think you will always come back to Apex. At least that's what I've seen from a lot of my friends, myself a little bit. I just think people are very entrenched in their primary genre and their primary games. And I guess the second way I have thought of this and kind of can visualize this for you guys is I think there are kind of different types of archetypes of gamers. And I've kind of personified them here in three different people who represent different types of gamers. Like I have Jim here, who is your typical FPS sports game guy, but he also likes war strategy games, third person shooters, RPGs. He doesn't feel any type of way about MMOs and Souls likes, but he doesn't like fighting games, arcades, and so on and so forth, as you can see here with Rebecca and Abby type gamers. And so I think the question that game developers need to ask themselves are we making a game for Jim and Abby? Are we making a game for Jim's only? Rebecca's only? Who is this game for exactly? So what I've seen over the past couple years is I think they're effectively either completely misgauging their target market and who they want to make this game for, or they're trying to rope too many people into one game and kind of give it a confusing art style where they're trying to keep that core audience, but they're trying to also rope another audience into the same game. And so what I've done to just further explain this is I've created two scenarios, and each of these pie diagrams represent the entire gaming market. Okay, so as you can see in this scenario one, Abby's gamers are the complete majority. Okay, they represent 55% of all gamers. You have Jim at 20% and Rebecca at 25%. And over on the right side, you have all the things that each of these types of gamers like. So, kind of logically in this scenario, you're going to try to make a game that appeals to the most people possible. Okay. And in this example here, Jim gamers and Abby gamers, both of them fundamentally love FPS games. So I think you would expect there to be either more FPS games on the market or you to make an FPS game because your bucket of people who are going to love your game is 75% here. And you may even get some Rebecca's because they're very neutral about FPS games. So you might not get every Rebecca, but you will get some. And of course, it's not that simple in real life. Okay. And I think this whole scenario could change if Jim's didn't like FPS games and you had to move it down to dislike, or Abby's, they were neutral about FPSs. I think that changes the calculus completely because, as I've said earlier, if your target market is going to be primarily Abby's, you need to be really in touch with what Abby type people are like. What are the things they like outside of games? What are the music they listen to? What is their general vibe like? You know? And those aspects being shown in implemented into the game is how you're going to resonate with them. It's kind of like Hallmark movies are specifically designed for moms. My mom can watch Hallmark movies for 12 hours on end. They're designed for her, okay? They're designed for the 50, 60-year-old woman mom who just loves a good feel good story, you know? They know who they're making that movie for and they eat them up. But for some reason with gaming companies, it's like we don't do that for some reason. And it's just the weirdest thing to me. And so just to really drive this home with my second scenario, if Jim's and Abby's are the clear majority in the gaming industry, and you make a game for a Rebecca, who I've represented here, only has 5%, then you should only expect 5% of gamers to buy your game. Okay. At most, at the very most, because not all Rebeccas are going to buy your game. And so, what I've seen lately is I feel like games are being made for Rebeccas when the industry looks like this with Jim's and Abby's. And they're trying to add elements that Jim and Abby's would like into a fundamentally Rebecca type game, trying to win some people over. But by doing that, I think they dilute the overall product and actually even alienate those Rebeccas that they kind of identified at the beginning as the target audience. I just think it's a really bad strategy. I don't think it works. I think it works logically, but I don't think it works practically because you're mixing too many things that I don't think are compatible. In the early 2000s, and specifically with Halo 2, I really feel like they nailed the target market. They really knew who they were making this game for. And it's really just everything about Halo 2. It's the cover art, it's the Master Chief design, it's Cortana and Master Chief's relationship, it's Breaking Benjamin having a song in the game, it's the electric guitar that they've added into the Halo theme. Everything just was really sick. It's Sergeant Johnson, who's like your best friend. It's everything, man. It's the dialogue. It all appeals to a certain target market. My girlfriend really likes to play Stardew Valley. She plays Stardew Valley with tons of mods, makes her farm. She loves it. She plays it hours on end. And I love watching her play it. I love watching the what she designs with her farms and everything. She loves it herself. But she wouldn't like Halo 2. I think she would like it for me, but this is not a game that would appeal to her. And that's completely fine. Just like there's not games that she would play that would appeal to me. And that's completely fine. So it's just all about knowing who you're making the game for. And I think that is a part of incompetence. And I think we've seen that a lot lately in modern gaming, specifically in the West. And so my next theory as to why I think design is dead in Western gaming in general is I think there's a lot of bad actors. And this is the idea that mainly there are people in gaming who see gaming as a medium to further their political agenda or social agenda. These people see gamers as people to be educated rather than people to be entertained. These people kind of remind me of those street preachers you'll see like outside a big event. Like if you go to Atlanta and you're walking to Mercedes-Benz stadiums, you'll see these street preachers with these huge signs that says like God hates you or drinking beer, one beer is a sin, stuff like that. And they're very like hellfire and brimstone, you know? These people, I don't really see a difference between them and the street preachers, to be honest. Now, you may think that they're preaching a better message, but it's the preaching. It's kind of lazy almost because they're not telling their ideals through the story. You know, if you really think about it, like a game like Halo is almost anti-religious. You know, Arbiter goes through this whole questioning of his faith and questioning whether or not the prophets are telling the truth, and that's like his whole life. So he goes from being this religious fanatic, who I'd say is more akin to like a Islamic extremist, and especially at the time that was very prevalent with the Iraq War and everything. But he goes from that to being a critic almost, or a skeptic. And so seeing Arbiter make that metamorphosis into a more reasonable guy, you know, into a more moderate religious person, which I think is kind of the theme of the game, is really important to tell it through him and not just have Master Chief or Cortana just talk at Arbiter on why he's wrong. I don't think that would be a very compelling story, and I think it would also be annoying. And I think each of the three people here do that in their games. And hell, even Anita Sarkeesian, she's doing it in TV shows now, so we just can't get rid of her. But their motive is basically the same. They want to teach us about their enlightened views of the world, as if they are the authority on what's right and wrong. And Neil Druckmann, I don't even know if he even really cares about these specific social issues. I think he primarily cares about his ego and being seen as someone who's virtuous. You know, but this whole thing is ironic because I think it just ends up doing the opposite. You know, I think it plunges the industry into chaos and people have a very skeptical view about games now because I really think people don't want to be preached at in their entertainment. I think that is kind of one of the number one rules of entertainment. Now, I think you can tell your story and say a lot of these things, like these social movements that you want to talk about, say it, but through the narrative. And it can't be so obvious as to like people know exactly what you're doing. And I don't think y'all do this well at all. Like y'all just very lazy about it, you know. It's like the scene in Avengers Endgame where all the women fighters like come and pose before the camera. That's super cringe. Like that doesn't make any sense. Your strength often doesn't need to be shown. It just happens. You know, you're just strong because of the things that you do and the way you look on the screen. And what I mean it doesn't need to be shown is like it can't be just like directly like I am strong. And it kind of reminds me of this quote from Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones where it says, "No true king has to say I am the king." Something along those lines. And I think that same logic applies to strength and showing strength and trying to portray strength in video games and in movies. Characters like Master Chief and Kratos just have aura. You just know that they're strong, you know? And it doesn't just apply to men. Like, if you're going to write a strong female character, I think you can look at Miranda Keyes in Halo. You know, she's strong, but not in the same way as Master Chief. She's strong because she's a good leader. She's has this willpower to her, you know? And the same for Katana. She's strong because of her intelligence. And Halsey and Halo Reach, she's strong because of her intelligence and her determination. And I think that's really important. You need to build these characters up, you know? You don't need to just proclaim that they're strong. And additionally, you don't need to break the fourth wall. You need to take the situation in the world seriously that you've created. And I see a lot of that. I see a lot of this quirk chungus, millennial cringe stuff in gaming, and it just like completely takes you out of the game and breaks the immersion. All right, so the last section is apathy. And these are gamers who really just hate any sort of criticism whatsoever. They're the anti-criterians. They are the conformists. And these are people who are like, why do you care? It's not that deep. Why do you care so much about the game design? Why do you care that the Halo ring is shiny and not looking like the old ancient figure that it was in the original? Like, you're just nitpicking. These people hate criticism. That's really what it is. Now, I think there's multiple theories on this, but primarily I think it's people don't want to be roped in with the what I'm calling the boy who cried woke. You know, it's like the guy who thinks everything's woke, who thinks the sky's woke, who thinks the grass color is woke. You know, those are people are very unreasonable. So I think they also alienate people in the same way that a lot of the bad actors do, you know, that I talked about in the previous section. And people don't want to be really affiliated with that. So the way I've seen apathy been applied the most is with the God of War Laffy trailer. And frankly, it's got me losing my mind because I just do not understand how people think this cube, this gelatin purple, blue, and white cube looks cool, especially in a God of War game. And I don't know if it's just like God of War fans just defending anything with God of War slapped onto it, but this does not fit in the theme of the God of War franchise to me. Notwithstanding the fact that this is going to be the first game without playing as Kratos, as far as we know, because the main character is Faye, who is Kratos' wife, who is dead, and she's kind of going through this underworld type deal, you know, like the afterlife. And some of it I think looks cool, but the main character in this cube, which seems to be the central part of the marketing that they're promoting, is super lame to me. I'm sorry. We're going from Kratos, who is jacked, who is a father, who has a dope ass axe, who's just like aura, to Faye, who kind of looks like shit, just kind of lame. All these colors are more fantasy rather than the grit of God of War. And so I just don't really think it fits. You know, and it kind of, as I said earlier, like, who is this game primarily for? Is this being made for 20-year-old men? Or is this like trying to get women into it? And I think at some point you just mix so much in to where you end up appealing to absolutely nobody. And if you point that out, the apathy crowd will just deny it. You know, they'll just be like, "Oh, you're just overanalyzing, nitpicking, like nothing can make you happy." And I think these are some of the most dangerous people in gaming because they don't care about what they're consuming. They're just going to consume for the sake of consuming. And so to round it out, I just think design is dead because I think we're just missing on why we're making games and who we're making these games for. I think if I had to sum it up in 2 words, those are it. And so it's really hard to find that X factor, you know, like what is it that makes the game great? And there's really not a great answer for that, but I do think being in tune with who you're making the game for and why you're making the game will set you up better for success than what we've seen lately with people having other motivations and other feelings about making their game. And so I really like this tweet here that I'm going to show. And it says, gameplay is both the foundation and the actual point. The entire structure of the house is gameplay. Story, visuals, music, etc. are ornaments to make the house look nicer, and additional support pillars to reinforce the structure. Content is part of the gameplay, by the way. And it's exactly right. It's the music that's playing while you're going through the dense fog in the forest. It's the little details on the plants on the foreign world that you're exploring. All this matters, and all of it makes and gets you closer to that X factor. And so thank you guys for watching. That's all I got for you guys today. If you like this video, hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And what do you think? Do you think design is generally dead in modern gaming right now, specifically Western gaming? And where did I go wrong? Am I missing something? And do you just disagree with me? Please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.